Welcome to Whispers and Confessions. There might be a twist waiting, so please make sure to watch until the end. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's begin right away.
Her hands explored my body, making my heart beat faster. The tension between us was intense, our breathing getting heavier as we lost ourselves in each other. Looking into each other's eyes, we forgot everything else, giving in to what we were feeling. Hi, I'm Michael and I'm 33. My wife Sarah is the same age, and we're close friends with James and Elizabeth, both 35. The four of us go way back. We all work together at the same company in Columbus, Ohio. Sarah and I started as newbies at the company, while James and Elizabeth were already established there. They were great mentors, always willing to show us the ropes and help us settle in. Everyone knew about James and Elizabeth's office romance. It was impossible to miss. The way they looked at each other said it all. They were inseparable during lunch breaks, and it was sweet watching Elizabeth straighten James's tie now and then. James was this tall, fit guy who always looked sharp in his suits, usually pretty reserved, but he'd get this special smile whenever Elizabeth was around. It was like watching a romance movie unfold in real life. Word spread quickly around the office when someone saw them sharing an umbrella in the rain. That's when everyone knew they were officially a thing. The office had a laid-back vibe. We could work at our own pace, chat with colleagues, and take breaks when needed. Sarah and I started the same year, but honestly, I didn't think of her as anything more than a coworker at first. Even though our desks were right next to each other and we talked every day, romance wasn't on my mind. Back then, Sarah was simple and practical about her appearance. She kept her hair tied back and wore these thick black glasses. Her style was simple, basic clothes, minimal makeup if any. I just saw her as another colleague, but I couldn't help noticing her naturally beautiful skin, and her upbeat personality was really infectious. Elizabeth was totally different. She had this gorgeous light brown hair that fell past her shoulders and always smelled amazing. Her style was more stylish, fitted white blouses that showed off her curves, and these stunning skirts with high slits. She was completely Sarah's opposite, and I'll admit, I couldn't help stealing glances at her now and then. Elizabeth was an amazing mentor when it came to work stuff. Sarah and I would often joke about wanting to be just like her when we became seniors ourselves. When James started hanging out with us too, our conversations naturally drifted beyond just work talk, and we all became pretty close. They really took us under their wing from day one. I'll admit, I started seeing Elizabeth differently, as more than just a coworker. I even daydreamed about asking her out if things were different, but she was with James, so I knew it was just wishful thinking. Still, Elizabeth sometimes did things that left me wondering. Like when she'd teach me how to use the copy machine, she'd hold my hand a bit longer than necessary. Or she'd lean over just enough to give me a peek down her blouse. During company dinners, she'd always sit next to me to fill my glass, and I'd feel her leg brush against mine under the table. The weird part was how she'd act totally normal whenever James looked our way. I could never figure out if she was just being friendly, or if there was something more to it. Eventually, our little group became inseparable. James was the first to suggest regular lunch meetups for us newcomers, and Elizabeth jumped at the chance to join. These lunches quickly became the highlight of our workdays, a time when we'd set aside work to share stories about our lives, crack jokes, and really get to know each other as friends. Everything changed during a company workshop. After dinner, the four of us went to the hotel's outdoor jacuzzi. It was getting late, close to closing time, and we were worried we'd miss our chance. But luck was on our side. A staff member came over and told us we could stay after hours. We were thrilled about having the jacuzzi to ourselves. Sarah was hesitant at first, saying, "Hanging out in a jacuzzi this late? I'm not sure." But James chimed in with a casual, "Come on, it'll be fun." Elizabeth added with a playful wink, "I'm in. Just behave yourselves, boys." After some gentle persuasion, Sarah finally gave in. Since everything else was closed, we had to change into our swimsuits right there by the jacuzzi. James and I tried to be gentlemanly by putting up some towels as a screen. Sarah was still nervous, pointing at our towel setup and saying, "You guys better not peek. Promise me." James and I held up our hands and swore we wouldn't look. Elizabeth laughed and said, "Don't worry, honey. I'll make sure these boys behave themselves." But let's be honest, we couldn't help ourselves. James and I shared a quick glance and snuck a few peeks while the girls were changing. We knew we shouldn't, but in that moment, curiosity got the better of us. Elizabeth's figure was incredible. She looked amazing, the kind you'd see on a magazine cover. My heart started racing, and I had to shift uncomfortably to hide my reaction. But Sarah was the real surprise of the night. Behind her usual modest appearance at work, she had an amazing figure that caught me completely off guard. When she stepped out in her swimsuit, her hair flowing freely and without her glasses, she looked like a different person. I couldn't take my eyes off her. In that moment, everything I thought I knew about Sarah changed. As we slipped into the jacuzzi, the warm water helped us all relax. We sat in a circle, our legs occasionally touching underwater, creating this exciting tension I'd never felt before. I couldn't help but notice Elizabeth's bare shoulders peeking above the water, the sight making my heart skip a beat. Sarah sat there quietly, head down in that cute, shy way of hers. The bubbling water barely hid glimpses that made my breath catch. James moved closer to Elizabeth, his hands finding her shoulders for a massage, while I reached for Sarah's hand under the water, giving it a gentle squeeze to let her know everything was okay. Even with the cool night air around us, something magical was happening in that warm water under the moonlight. We were all feeling something different, something special. And that's when I started seeing Sarah in a whole new light. After the workshop, things just clicked between Sarah and me. I couldn't stop thinking about her, and before I knew it, I was asking her out on a proper date. When Sarah said yes, I was over the moon. We spent every free moment together, going shopping, trying new restaurants, just enjoying each other's company. We got married not long after that. James and Elizabeth did the same shortly after. These days, while James and I still work together, Sarah and Elizabeth have moved on to different companies. But nothing's changed between the four of us. We're still as close as ever. Marriage has made everything even better. Our weekends are filled with cooking adventures, intense board game battles, movie marathons, and just enjoying life's simple pleasures together. Sarah's really gotten into cooking, and man, the meals she whips up for all of us are incredible. Elizabeth turned out to be great at gardening and started bringing life to our place with her beautiful plants. And thanks to James always dragging us out for tennis, we're staying pretty fit too. The four of us have become more than just friends. We're family now. From birthday celebrations to anniversary dinners, we've created so many amazing memories together. One summer, I became friends with a client who owned this amazing campsite. He was incredibly generous and offered to let us stay there for almost free. The timing couldn't have been better, so our little group jumped at the chance for a summer getaway. Even though we'd done some camping before, this was our first real adventure together. We settled into this gorgeous log cabin and started up the grill for an evening barbecue. The drinks were flowing, and Sarah and I found ourselves getting tipsy pretty quickly, probably because we were having such a blast. There was something magical about that mountain air, and we all wished we could freeze time right there. James got this nostalgic look on his face and said, "You know what this reminds me of? That workshop before our weddings. What a night that was." Elizabeth's eyes lit up at the memory. "God, that jacuzzi night." Sarah added, "We almost missed out on it." She giggled and added, "I was so nervous about you guys sneaking peeks." James laughed. "Sarah, you were the surprise of the night. Our quiet little co-worker turned knockout." Sarah playfully swatted at him. "Oh, shut up." Then she smiled, though I guess if it wasn't for that night, Michael and I might never have gotten together. I shook my head, grinning. "No way. Really?" That's when Elizabeth, with this mischievous glint in her eye, steered the conversation in a different direction. "So, what's the bedroom situation like for you two?" I couldn't help bragging a little. "Sarah's got the most beautiful skin, and man, those kisses." Sarah blushed hard. "Baby, Stop. But come on, what about you two? Elizabeth, clearly feeling the effects of the wine, got this seductive look in her eyes. Why tell when I can show? Before anyone could react, she was in James's lap, kissing him deeply. James didn't hesitate. His hands were already under her shirt, caressing her curves, and suddenly there was a lot more of Elizabeth on display than any of us expected. My heart raced as I watched them, my whole body heating up at the unexpected scene playing out in front of me. Elizabeth's bold move, so unlike her usual self, sent shivers down my spine. Sarah just watched, her lips parted in surprise, unable to look away. When they finally broke apart, Elizabeth turned to me, her blouse hanging loose. "Want to give it a try?" she whispered, before pressing her lips against mine. I hesitated for a second, but all those months of secret attraction took over, and I kissed her back. Sarah tried to pull us apart, saying, "Stop, please," but Elizabeth and I were lost in the moment. My mind clouded with desire. I thought this might be my only chance. Right there, with Sarah watching, I let my hands wander to Elizabeth's chest, completely caught up in the heat of the moment. James, who had been watching us, couldn't help himself anymore. He took Sarah's hand and pulled her closer. "Wait," Sarah said with a nervous voice. But James leaned in and kissed her gently, whispering, "Want to try this too?" Sarah pulled back a little, saying, "No, we shouldn't." But I could hear the wanting in her voice. After hesitating for a moment, she gave in to his kiss, and they went inside the log cabin together. Elizabeth and I stayed outside, where we could still smell the barbecue in the air. I'd always been attracted to Elizabeth, but being married meant keeping those feelings hidden. Now, with her right here, all those feelings came rushing back. The way her skin felt and her breath on my neck made me dizzy with desire. I kissed her neck softly, leaving little marks that made her sigh. My hands moved to her chest, touching her gently. Elizabeth leaned into my touch, her eyes closing. Her hands explored my body, making my heart beat faster. The tension between us was intense, our breathing getting heavier as we lost ourselves in each other. Looking into each other's eyes, we forgot everything else, giving in to what we were feeling. Just as I started to slip off her underwear, my fingers shaking at her waist, I felt my heart pounding in my chest. I was so caught up in the mix of excitement and nervousness, but Elizabeth put her hand on mine and whispered, "Wait." "We can't," she said quietly, her voice shaky. "I know we're drunk, but this isn't right." Her words stopped me cold. I knew she was right, but I still felt disappointed. I could still feel where she touched me, and I saw how flushed her face was in the dim light. I wanted to keep going so badly, but I had to respect what she wanted. As she fixed her clothes, I tried to slow down my racing heart. "Maybe we should go check on James and Sarah," she suggested softly. I nodded, not sure what to say. We shared a small smile, and somehow the awkwardness started to fade away. We made our way back to the log cabin, with nervous energy between us. I pushed open the door, and my heart nearly stopped at what I saw. There on the living room couch were Sarah and James, clothes scattered on the floor, completely wrapped up in each other. They were so caught up in each other they didn't even hear us come in. The cabin was filled with nothing but the sound of their soft sighs and whispered breaths. I stood there frozen, my mind trying to process what I was seeing. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine I'd catch my wife in such an intimate moment with another man. But what surprised me most was my reaction. Instead of jealousy or anger, I felt something entirely different. Watching Sarah like this, seeing this passionate side of her I'd never known existed, sent an unexpected thrill through my body. It was like discovering a whole new person in my wife, and surprisingly, it turned me on. Elizabeth squeezed my hand tight, clearly as shocked as I was by what we were witnessing. Of course, Elizabeth had started all of this. Her bold moves, first kissing James, then me, had gotten everyone worked up. Sure, the alcohol had loosened us up, But it was Elizabeth's daring that had brought our hidden desires to the surface. This wasn't like cheating with strangers. We were all close friends who trusted each other completely. Years of friendship had built this special bond between us. As the initial shock wore off, we all found ourselves wanting to explore this new territory together. When Sarah finally spotted us, she jumped back startled. Her cheeks flushed bright red as she bit her lip nervously, reaching for my hand. "Hey, it's okay," I said softly. "We're all feeling it." Those words seemed to melt away Sarah's tension, and she fell into my arms. I ran my hand gently along her back as we shared a deep kiss. James, finally noticing us, turned red and started to stammer, but I cut him off. "Don't worry about it. Let's just enjoy this moment together." Elizabeth watched James and Sarah with a mix of emotions before turning to me with desire burning in her eyes. "Seeing them together like that, it makes me want to finish what we started earlier," she whispered, sliding back into my arms. Her touch sent shivers down my spine, and soon we were all lost in a night of passion, discovering each other in new ways. The experience brought us closer than ever before. We saw new sides of each other, making memories we'd never forget. Our friendships became something more special, yet still built on the trust we'd always shared. The next morning, Sarah stretched lazily and laughed. "Last night was crazy. I think we all needed this," I said softly, and James nodded in agreement. "Best camping trip ever." Elizabeth curled up closer to us all and smiled. "You know what's weird? This doesn't feel weird at all. What the women knew was that James and I had actually talked about something like this happening before the trip. We'd kept that conversation to ourselves, of course. Looking at all of us together now, I knew this was just the beginning of an exciting new chapter in our relationships.